speak because this is the last meeting before we have our election, so I just wanted to get as much information out to people as possible. So we're going to start to talk about ABA services and services for children on the autism spectrum. We have Mary Cohen, who's going to provide a presentation on comprehensive behavioral health model, but she's going to go after BPS. John Beer and Seth Bartholomew are here from the Boston Public Schools to talk about ABA and sort of what the changes have been in the Boston Public Schools, a little bit of an explanation about what applied behavioral analysis is, and then to obviously answer any questions that you may have. But before they do their actual presentation, I just wanted to give a little bit of an introduction about the law with regard to children on the autism spectrum. It's important that parents who have children on the spectrum know that in Massachusetts, we have a specific law that speaks about children on the autism spectrum and the requirements that the team has to make with regard to the child's IEP. There's a Department of Education memorandum that talks about not only the law, but it describes in detail what those areas are. And you know, it's helpful if you have a child on the spectrum to review that memo and to sort of make sure when you go to your child's team meeting that you're hitting all of the areas that pertain to your child, because it talks about the issues of social interactions, their skills and proficiencies, you know, sensory experiences or sensory reactions to things. A lot of kids need to have a sensory evaluation because they can have significant reactions to certain things, whether it be noise, whether it be tactile. It could be the type of clothing that they wear, it can be with regard to what foods they eat, and you really want to identify what type of an issue it is that they're dealing with so that you can focus on that to try to desensitize them to what's ever causing them distress. There's also, with regard to the children on the spectrum, the law specifically talks about their social and emotional development. It talks about behaviors with regard to whether or not your child needs behavioral interventions. The children on the autism spectrum, that's very common. Whether or not your child has verbal or nonverbal communication needs. Some children are verbal and they need assistance with communication because it's limited with regard to their verbal output. Other children are nonverbal and they may require augmentative communication devices. A lot of children now use the iPad with Pro-Loco to Go. It's a much less expensive device that provides, you know, pictures that the children touch, and then there's a voice output to it. My child's not diagnosed on the spectrum, but she's nonverbal, and her device to communicate, it was $8,000. Fortunately, we have two health insurances, and between the two of those picked up the cost for it. And Mass Health is actually wonderful when it comes to augmentative communication devices. But that was $8,000. The iPad is like $300 to $500, and the Pro-Loco to Go, I think, is $200. So the difference in cost there is, you know, pretty significant. So I think that the iPad, frankly, has opened up a lot of opportunities that I've seen for not only communication pieces, but actual skill development in terms of there's a lot of free apps out there for matching, for math, for reading. Someone's out there developing all these apps that actually pertain to the stuff that our kids need to learn how to do. And they're doing it on the iPad so that we don't have to print out as many materials, laminate as many materials, process them, and then find out that it was something that didn't work, and then toss that all away and start all over again. It's actually a wonderful tool. The law also talks about the child's ability to sort of understand nonverbal communication. Are they making eye contact? Can they understand facial expressions? Do they understand, you know, people's body language, things of that nature? And you know, Massachusetts is pretty unique in this regard in that we have a specific section of the law that talks about children on the autism spectrum. And it talks to the teams about what it is that they're required to do when developing an IEP for a child with autism. You know, social interactions and the child's proficiencies, whether or not there's issues with regard to, whether or not there's issues with stereotypy and behaviors that are not only interfering or maladaptive, but behaviors that are interfering with their ability to attend to task and focus. A lot of people think as behaviors as sort of a negative thing, but a behavior can be something that's interfering with something that, you know, if you're not paying attention to something or you're not able to focus or you're not able to attend to task, that's a behavior that's interfering with your accessibility to learning. Because if you can't look at the materials and pay attention to what's being asked of you, then your ability to respond appropriately is impacted by that. So Seth, we'll talk more about what behaviors actually is, but I just want you to know that this is an area in the law that the team is required to address. You know, talking about transitions, you know, what are you using for those? Are there visual schedules? You know, a lot of children have difficulty going from the classroom to the lunchroom, or, you know, from therapy to back to the classroom. It's those transition periods that a lot of kids require additional support for. So we'll put this up on our website so that everybody can have direct access to it. It's currently available on the Department of Education website, but there is a specific statute that's there to help parents understand what it is that the team process should involve for their children. And I encourage everyone to take a look at it because it is very helpful, and it gives you a little bit of a checklist of all the areas that you want to make sure that you hit during your IEP meeting. Okay?